Good afternoon, everyone. This meeting is now reconvened. I'd like to welcome all of you and, of course, to welcome all of our viewing and listening audiences. Just to let you know that the meeting is being recorded and will be broadcast on the Parliament Channel 11, Parliament Radio 105.5 FM, and the Parliament's YouTube channel, Parl View, for viewing at a later date. Questions may come in to you as well through YouTube. Just a bit of housekeeping. All of the participants, or that being the committee members and officials, questions are to be directed through the chair. Also, I want to tell you that you should activate your microphones when recognized by the chair and to turn it off when you're finished speaking. I want to welcome all of you from the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs and from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts. And I am going to now introduce myself and the other members, and of course then ask you to introduce yourselves. So I am Paula Gopi-Schoon, the Chairman of the Joint Select Committee on Foreign Affairs.
Dr. Maria Dillon Remy, Vice Chair and Member.
So I'm now going to ask you to introduce yourselves, starting with the permanent secretaries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good afternoon. I am Rachel Toussaint, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. I'm Rachel Toussaint, Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. To my left is Mrs. Neela Ram Atwaru, Deputy Permanent Secretary. Behind me to the left is Ms. Erica Fortune, Acting Deputy Permanent Secretary. And directly behind me is Ms. Young, Director, Policy and Planning Division. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson, members of the committee. I am Videsh Maraj, Acting Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts. With me today is Director of Culture, Mr. Tej Ramlugan, Cultural Officer 3, Mr. Damian Richardson, as well as Manager of Destination Marketing from Trinidad Tourism Limited, Ms. Shanice Sutherland.
Thank you very much. I think you all know why we are here. And this is an inquiry. This is in response to an inquiry into the efficacy of Trinidad and Tobago's cultural diplomacy and opportunities for strengthening its cultural and tourism products. The inquiry objectives are to identify and assess the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs cultural and public policy diplomacy initiatives aimed at raising the visibility and influence of Trinidad and Tobago's Trinidad and Tobago regionally and internationally. Also, to assess the support provided by the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs to the initiatives of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts aimed at promoting the attractiveness of Trinidad and Tobago as a tourism destination, a tourist destination regionally and also internationally. Also, to identify areas where interministerial collaboration could be strengthened. That being said, I'm now going to invite the permanent secretaries to give brief opening remarks. Ms. Toussaint.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair and members of the Joint Select Committee on Foreign Affairs, Permanent Secretary and representatives of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, members of the public, good afternoon. Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee for the invitation to participate in this inquiry into the efficacy of Trinidad and Tobago's cultural diplomacy and opportunities for strengthening its cultural and tourism products. The Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs is the main entity of the government of Trinidad and Tobago that conducts the country's foreign relations with other states and regional and international bodies. The ministry is responsible for the Caribbean community and the wider Caribbean, consular and protocol services, external relations, overseas missions, and treaties. Engagements take place within Trinidad and Tobago at headquarters and through overseas missions and at multilateral fora. With specific reference to cultural diplomacy, while the term is relatively new and relatively recent in vintage, in the field of diplomacy, it is not new to the practice of diplomacy. A simple definition of cultural diplomacy is the use of a country's cultural elements or features to develop and promote relationships with a view to protecting and promoting the country's interests. As we engage in cultural diplomacy, the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs takes a singular role here at headquarters and at Trinidad and Tobago's overseas missions in serving as an official conduit through which Trinidad and Tobago's cultural and tourism products are promoted. The ministry develops, supports, and nurtures bilateral and multilateral relationships that would help to create opportunities to expose Trinidad and Tobago's cultural and tourism products, and exchanges that promote greater understanding and cooperation with our partners. I hope that during the course of this afternoon's exchange, there could be greater understanding of the ministry's role and perhaps even fresh ideas as to how we could better serve as we seek to create and sustain awareness of this country's cultural and tourism products using cultural diplomacy. Thank you, Madam Chair.
P.S. Maraj.
Madam Chairperson and members of the Joint Select Committee, good afternoon. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts mandate is to transform Trinidad and Tobago into a premier tourist destination, as well as develop our many cultural and artistic forms to improve the country's economic and social progress. The Ministry, through the promotion of various aspects of our culture and exchange of ideas and artistic expressions, recognizes the significance of cultural diplomacy in fostering mutual understanding amongst nations. Trinidad and Tobago currently maintains international relations with 26 countries through diplomatic corps and with 32 countries through honorary councils. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts leverages these relationships to improve and increase its reach through cultural agreements, cultural exchanges, promotional and familiarization tours, and participation in development programs. To date, Trinidad and Tobago has been signatory to 16 cultural cooperation agreements. This allows the ministry to collaborate with regional and international states with regard to cultural policy, grant funding, institutional strengthening, and product development and marketing. We are also signatory to a number of conventions with the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, UNESCO, including protection and promotion of diversity of cultural expressions and safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage. We at the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, along with our implementing agency, Tourism Trinidad Limited, are grateful for the continual support provided by the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. It is our hope that our participation in today's inquiry will allow for even greater synergy between our entities and provide any needed clarity that may be required. We are honored to contribute to the discussions and look forward to receiving committee's recommendations for advancing cultural diplomacy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Permanent Secretaries. One of the aims of the foreign policy of Trinidad and Tobago is to assist Trinidad and Tobago's nationals to realize their fullest potential and to showcase their diversity and creativity. And you know, there is, as a multicultural state, there is no shortage of creativity. And so I go to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and I look to the role of cultural diplomacy in foreign policy. To what extent has this been successful?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Traditionally, the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs has engaged in cultural diplomacy almost routinely in the way we interact with our counterparts overseas and here in Port-of-Spain in terms of using our cultural elements, features, characteristics, artifacts to develop relationships. And when we develop relationships, we also use those relationships to help promote Trinidad and Tobago's culture cultural products and tourism. There has been a measure of success. One of the challenges, though, is actually determining in a precise way how much that effort has been helpful. We know that it has been, but it has been challenging to measure it. But if we look, for example, at the most recent success we've had in getting agreement for the World Steel Pan Day, that would have come through some significant effort from the ministry's team at home and abroad, specifically at the Permanent Mission of Trinidad and Tobago to the United Nations. We have routinely participated in expositions and fairs overseas where we are able to highlight tourism and cultural products, gaining interest in populations overseas in not just visiting Trinidad and Tobago, but in engaging in activities that are related to Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you.
And I'll stay on that particular topic. The World Steel Pan Day is a significant achievement. How do you then see us, that apart, how do you see us strengthening the opportunity again through cultural diplomacy in a more strategic way to ensure that across your perhaps your more significant missions abroad, there are cultural attaches attached to particular missions, and therefore a more strategic approach to cultural diplomacy, and of course working to showcase more than just a steel pan, and also to expand the steel pan as a world-class instrument. But how do you see yourselves as improving your structures to really achieve true cultural diplomacy and to sell Trinidad and Tobago's creativity and diversity and natural heritage?
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you mentioned, there are cultural attaches. At the moment, we have two, one in Washington, D.C., and one in Miami. It would be good to have more of them where we have a large, significant diaspora, which would always be a boon and a support to any activity related to cultural and tourism promotion. If we use the World Steel Pan Day as an example of a strategic approach to promoting culture, coming out of the knowledge and popularity of World Steel Pan Day, using it as an event period or opportunity, we can highlight not just the steel pan in itself, which is a fantastic musical instrument, and it has a legacy of its own and a story of its own. We can use that to develop opportunities for those who are involved in the creation of the steel pan, tuners, those who teach. It is also associated with our festivals. It can bring popularity to our festivals as well. And it can also broaden the scope of opportunity for those who are involved in not just the steel pan, but carnival arts and other related aspects of our culture. In the absence of a cultural attaché in every mission, what has been happening is we have partnered with our diaspora, where there's a significant diaspora. We use them. We also have opportunities. For example, I'll use London as an example. I don't know what the interval is, but there's frequently a Commonwealth Fair where there's an opportunity to highlight and promote both tourism and culture of Trinidad and Tobago. So we have to yes, be more strategic in developing programs, and that is something that we have actually started doing quite recently, partnering with both public and private sector towards giving greater profile and getting greater opportunity out of the cultural elements of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Madam Chair. At this time, initially, there were 3 missions where a decision was taken for cultural attaches to be assigned. And 2 of those positions continue to be filled. One of them has to be filled, and that's the one in New York, the position in New York. There was one that attaché resigned some time ago. At this time, the ministry will have to do some consultation with the missions abroad. There are opportunities, I think, outside of the 3 where there was a decision to have the cultural attaches. There is opportunity, I think, in places like London, I think in New Delhi, because there is ongoing cultural interaction. In Nigeria, for example. I think those are places where we have opportunity to strategically explore using cultural diplomacy more actively.
Apart from showcasing what Trinidad and Tobago has to offer and has on offer to the rest of the world, cultural diplomacy can also be used in your collaboration and to ease and to springboard greater collaboration with your other partners within the region and extra-regionally as well. To what extent have we been using cultural diplomacy as a point and as a means of collaboration with other states?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is used so frequently that sometimes we don't even think of it as something that we define, to be honest. I'll give you a few examples. When we visit a country, or even before we visit a country, there is interaction at different levels. And the only way for someone to truly understand you, you have to take that relationship outside of the meeting room, outside of the conference room. Sometimes it's as basic as an invitation to dinner at your home, where you actually play music from Trinidad and Tobago. You present food from Trinidad and Tobago. You may share a CD, if people still use CDs, I still do. You may share a CD with pan music on it. And these are the ways that people get to understand who you are. Because when you're at a formal sitting in a conference, all they know about you is what you deliver during an intervention, what you may be given to say or what you've made a quick note of to say during the course of the meeting. And it doesn't say who you are, who Trinidad and Tobago is as a country, who Trinbagonians are as a people, and what we have to offer. So it comes through that kind of sometimes very informal exchange. Sometimes you formalize it through an invitation. When we host National Day events, that is a huge opportunity where we can share who we are. Overseas, when missions host such events, we look through the diaspora to find someone who can play the steel pan. There might be a budding artist who is around who may come and sing, present something. Trinidad and Tobago foods, delicacies are served because there's always, and this is why I say that the diaspora is a great support. Because if we are hosting something in London or New York or Washington, DC, the only people really who are going to be able to provide you with something to offer your foreign guests would be someone from Trinidad and Tobago diaspora, because we know how to cook our food, we know how to play our music. So it's the cultural diplomacy is routinely interwoven in what we do. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And I agree with you, but as I move on to allow the other members to ask questions, I make the point again of the importance of cultural diplomacy and not again in showcasing what is on offer and ensuring that it's maximized to the point of contribution to the diversification of Trinidad and Tobago and having a direct impact on the economy. But again, assisting in meeting in increasing our collaboration with other states. But of course, I want the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to recognize the importance of structure and strategy in the full utilization of its policy. But I pass on now to Member Dylan Remy.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair, to actually both PSs. PS Toussaint, you talked about the importance of what happened, and we all celebrated, the whole world celebrated at August 11th. And I mean, to see Trinidad and Tobago steel pan on Google, you know, as what was presented for the day, etc. I just want to ask, though, as we are talking about the support, that this was a significant event that happened at the level of the UN. So we had to have your personnel there doing the important, the strategic things in terms of getting that done. But we are talking about an instrument. We are talking about our culture. We are talking about the steel pan. What was the kind of coordination and collaboration that resulted in that? That's one, between the ministries, culture, and Foreign Affairs and Culture to get that done. That's one. And the other thing is that what has happened since in terms of making that event, not just an event now where something is recognized as an instrument, but having the knock-on effect of that in terms of trade, in terms of whatever else. What has happened since then?
Thank you, Madam Chair. If my colleague will allow me to start. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts provided us with some documentary information, some paper, if I'm using the right term, that would give us a solid foundation when we put it forward to the UN as a suggestion, a recommendation, a proposal for the declaring of World Steel Pan Day. So the substance mainly came from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts. At this time going forward, yes, the plan is for it to be more than just an event, but we already have, I think, at least 3 proposals from missions. I can't remember which ones now, but there are 3 proposals for activities for World Steel Pan Day. And what is expected to happen is that the right kind of people, right category of person and entity would be invited to participate in the event so that we would be able to promote the instrument as something that we export, for example, and related items and concepts related to Pan, related to our culture, and expanding to other areas, because usually when an event is hosted, there's not just music on display, it's beverages, it's food, it's items that, there are items that we export to the particular jurisdiction. So it would provide an opportunity for that kind of exposure and promotion as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So, PS Foreign Affairs said exactly what I wanted to say, but I'll just add a little bit to that. When World Steel Pan Day was declared last year, we collaborated through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to have steel pan played in New York in Times Square. That was the first time steel pan was on display in Times Square to gather attention on an international stage, right? This year, we're collaborating through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, as PS said again, for it to be played in other missions. PS didn't identify the missions, but I could just tell you London is one of those places that it will be on display this year, right? Apart from which, the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts is looking to build on World Steel Pan Day and build an entire festival around it. So we're currently in the project planning phase for that. This would include outreach through the missions for targeted approach. And as Madam Chairperson said, it's not just about plain steel pan, but it's actually looking to see what benefits we could get, what economic benefits we could bring back to Trinidad and Tobago from this. So the playing of the steel pan is just the starting point, the conversation opener, basically, right? We're looking at exports, we're looking at investments, we're looking at promoting and selling Trinidad and Tobago at these events, and having a targeted and focused approach.
And the targeted and focused approach will be, you'll have a collaboration, in other words, not just you targeting, i.e. tourism, as to what you want as an outcome, but that being targeted, hopefully with the Ministry of Trade and also Foreign Affairs. Is that the intention?
Absolutely. Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Foreign and Caribbean Affairs, and Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts.
Okay. That's all for the moment, Chair.
Thank you. Member Charles, are we ready?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the Permanent Secretary, both Permanent Secretaries. For example, we have a document here that says Guyana was the 4th largest export partner to Trinidad and Tobago in 2017, resulting in $309 million in exports and imports, and they give a figure. And it seems to me that one of the challenges we have in cultural diplomacy, in terms of the importance to our diversification, economic diversification, and other challenges, is quantifying in some measurable way that cultural tourism provides so much, even a reasonable guesstimate to the economy. And I think one of the issues we have with Carnival, because Carnival does bring in money. We know, nobody knows how much. There are figures all over the place. And I feel if we could say it brings in $500 million, then what gypsies are, well, the chairman of the NCC is asking for $147 million. It's placed in context. So the question is there any attempt, however rudimentary, to liaise with, say, the University of the West Indies? There probably studies exist, or the University of Trinidad and Tobago, that I know is very involved in culture, to help us quantify what are the economic benefits to Trinidad and Tobago. That's question one. And the second question, I know we have World Steel Pan Day, but I hear my Barbadian colleagues telling me pan was invented in Barbados. Right? And we know that is not true. But it seems to me that we need to have a strategic vision to make Trinidad and Tobago the mecca of pan, whether it be an international competition where all the best panmen from the world come to Port of Spain, to get the skills, whether we need to, and the same goes for chutney and all the other things. So the second question will be, what is the strategic plan to locate and maintain Trinidad and Tobago as not only one of the countries in the Caribbean involved in PAN, but we are the mecca of PAN. So the first question, if I recall, is the quantifying of the benefits.
Thank you, member. So I'd like to start with the second question first, because that is the simplest one for me, right? In terms of what we are doing to solidify steel pan in Trinidad and Tobago, and obviously on the world stage. So the UN Declaration of World Steel Pan Day was just a start. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts is actively pursuing the geographical indicator for the steel pan originated in Trinidad and Tobago. So we have a consultant on board, and we are in the process of making the application as we speak. What that would mean for Trinidad and Tobago, it means that steel pan will now be associated as originating from Trinidad and Tobago. There are certain benefits that companies, if you relate it back to business, would gain from this intellectual property, certain characteristics that goes with it being produced in a specific region, those type of things. It would help with the international marketing of the instrument as well, right? Apart from that, the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts is also seeking to pilot the declaration of the steel pan as the national musical instrument of Trinidad and Tobago. That is built on the premise of developing national pride, culture associated with the steel pan and all that has gone along with the steel pan over years, right? So it's a holistic approach that we are taking to advance the steel pan in Trinidad and Tobago as well as on the international stage, right? The second question you asked about the economic benefits to TNT from cultural diplomacy. What I can say is that from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, the markets that we have, these attaches, these these cultural attaches, as well as these missions, these overseas missions, there's a lot of promotion, as PS Tucson said, through the national days, things of that nature. We see tourists coming in from these markets, largely diaspora, right? But we see a lot of other tourists coming from European countries and stuff like that. Whereas it's kind of early for us to divulge data in terms of what would have arrived for Carnival, I can tell you we have seen an increase from last year, and residents abroad returning, which is something that we've not been capturing, is something that the ministry is focusing on this year to ensure that that is captured. So the visitor arrival is actually a lot larger than what CSO has reported in the past, because they've only focused on reporting visitor arrival by nationality. When you factor in visitor arrival by non-residents, the figure jumps. The CSO also estimated last year the average visitor spend was about $2,200 US. That's very conservative. When you multiply that by 40,000 persons, by 6.7, you go up to well over $500 million, and that's for the Carnival season. So if we're looking at the estimates, you are right. For Carnival, it is going to be phenomenal, right? A lot of this happens through cultural diplomacy as well, right? Because, like I said, these visitors come from the markets that PS Tucson has submissions is that they are out promoting and actively promoting Trinidad and Tobago in. So I give the way to PS.
Madam Chair, thank you, Mr. Maharaj. I don't think I have anything to add to that answer, actually. Thank you.
Sorry, in terms of quantifying the benefits, we know and suspect that there are a lot of, let's say, chutney artists who go to Guyana and Suriname, and they earn an income. And we have calypsonians and soca artists who go and sing in these various offshoots of our national festival. In your calculation of the overall benefit of cultural diplomacy, and I do not know if sports diplomacy is part of this thing too, but I suspect that the figure could be 3 or 4 billion US, but nobody knows, and therefore we do not give any priority. So the question is, I know you spoke about Carnival, and excellent, but is the net wide enough to catch all the contributors to our national economy in a way that could make people stand up and realize that this is a significant contributor to our foreign exchange earnings, which we may, and in fact may be critical to our diversification strategy.
Thank you. So I mean, definitely from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, we would love to see that data as well. You are quite right in that you have a lot of artists, and through the ministry, through our side, we normally provide a lot of support to artists going abroad. So we are aware that we have a lot of persons out there making a living and stuff like that. In terms of the return, we do not have that figure, right? I don't think CSO captures that data, but it's definitely something that we could look at, and it's definitely something that I think we would need.
Last point in terms of the tax implication to Board of Inland Revenue, may be. Since that may be, I do not know if they tap into or not, or, so that it may assist the revenues of the state. And those are things that we need to look at. I think the time has come for us to have a consultant see perhaps with the UTT and say, we want you to use your best knowledge and expertise to come up with the range of revenue generation possibilities. And that will help you to enhance what are the critical areas we will support, and how much we would support, and how do we justify that support to the taxpayer.
Madam
Yes.
Chair, may I?
Yes, please.
I just, the member made a very interesting comment, and over the years, I observed, like he has, the performers go abroad on their own steam. They do well, they showcase, they present, promote. But what we have to do between us is to find a way to, is this on? Is to find a way to, yes, rightly said, Madam Chair, be more strategic. Find a way to package what we have in a way that brings discernible and precisely discernible revenue back to Trinidad and Tobago. Quite recently, in fact, we're still in discussions about it. We have started looking into just that with, as I said earlier, I think government and private sector entities to partner to see how we can, yes, use cultural diplomacy to bring more returns and identifiable returns to Trinidad and Tobago through culture. So it's very new. I trust that very soon we would be able to roll this out and have it continuously, but we have begun to partner along these lines. Thank you.
Before going on to Member Manning, I just want to jump in a little bit on the particular point you're talking about. And it really has, to my mind, to do with the formalization of these businesses, because in effect, it's a business that you're running if you are, in fact, earning revenue, whether it's locally or foreign or so on. There is that problem in Trinidad and Tobago with many small and micro businesses that are not formalized and registered, and therefore it's difficult to track where they are, what they contribute, what contribution they should be making to the government, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's an area that has to be, formalization that has to be encouraged. And I would like to hear just the views of the Minister of Tourism on the whole formalization of not just carnival, but of your producers, your calypsonians, your soca performers, your bands, etc. Now, the new procurement legislation requires that all of these entities be registered as well. What is your thrust in terms of the formalization? As much as there may be obligations arising out of such a formal process, the benefits are in fact greater in terms of the assistance that can be got from, that can be achieved through the different government schemes and so on. I think they're all inextricably linked. So perhaps you can tell us what's your intention in the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts to formalize all of these diverse entities, not just, I don't want to focus only on Carnival, but there are a number of well-known artists, for instance. And in Trinidad and Tobago, our art is special. It portrays the landscapes of our country, the culture of our country. We have very world-renowned artists in Trinidad and Tobago. So it extends right across the compendium of cultural activities and persons involved in a commercial, on the commercial side of our culture and tourism activities. What is the intention to see them more formalized?
Thank you for that question, Madam Chairperson. What I want to start by saying is that the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts has an artist registry where we have persons that are formally registered art providers, yeah, and cultural officers, right? And cultural officers, workers, right? Apart from which, through our sponsorship, government grants and whatnot, we ensure that anybody that we sponsor is registered, that they do have an official business, that they are paying taxes. These are all documents that we look for in terms of sponsorship. But I'll ask the Director of Culture to elaborate a little bit more because he has a lot more knowledge in terms of all the different areas.
Good afternoon. From my entrance into the public services, it's about 26 years or so. We have to be fair to the country from the perspective of cultural industries, and culture as a business never existed. We supported culture because culture benefited the people. It was a form of human development. So over many years, the grant scheme that the ministry had at the time, we have found the number of participants, organizations, more than quadrupled, the number of artists, the type of programs that they're having, the scope of the programs, it has gone international. However, within the last 10 years or so, CARICOM has been, the buzzword has been cultural industries. And as the country move away from the energy sector, we need to gather numbers. So we treat this thing more as a business, but the systems weren't there. What needs to be done going forward is to have a whole of government approach to gathering this data. I was fortunate to be a part of a conference in 2012, and the mayor of New Orleans was saying, right up, they knew exactly how many persons were there in the hotel business, how many cooks were there, what is the average salary. They could have said, this is government's investment, but they also said, we are guaranteed this much in taxes at the end of it. And this is why I feel Trinidad and Tobago needs to go. While we are on that path, PS has raised the artist registry. That's one of the first steps that we had in terms of actually formalizing this thing. So in a way of moving away from government support and having private sector more involved, the tax allowance was born. So central to that is the artist registry. So to get this tax allowance, the exemption, the artists must be registered with the ministry. So you come into us, you get your certificate, you get your sponsor. Sponsor would use that certificate when he's filing. But of course, it's just a start. We need to be gathering a lot more information. Take, for example, if we're looking at customs, for example, we can see the type of equipment that comes in. So we can monitor the development sector. We can see the type of recording equipment and musical equipment. However, in this digital era, a lot of stuff is purchased online. There's no way of tracking these things. So there are potential loss of taxes. So it has to be a whole of government, and it has to be focused going forward, rather than just in silos, putting these activities. We need to pull together and decide this is the type of information that we need to gather, and we move forward from there.
Wonderful. I don't want are you finished?
Yes.
Good.
So,
I get the sense that there is direction, and that's important, but I think that is important, but I think part of the policy of the Ministry of Tourism and Culture and the Arts would be to formalize or to come up with some policy recommendations with regard to that particular matter of the industry, tourism and cultural industries. Right, I want to move now to Mr. Manning, Member Manning. I think it's beyond the right tone as we talk about taxes and formalization and contribution to the economy, for us to move to Member Manning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have two questions for the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts. One is there a registry of international partners that you're working with in terms of creating opportunities for local artists? And let me give you an example of what I'm saying. At one point, I lived in the Miami area, and I was working with a program for young children. And it amazed me that at one point, the song Feeling Hot, Hot, Hot came on. And every school child in Miami knows that song. They also knew Dollar Wine. They knew the Dollar Wine song. And they all knew this music from the Carnival cruise ships. Their parents would take them on the cruise ships, like on weekends or whenever, and they knew this music. I don't believe, though, that there was any attachment of that music to Trinidad and Tobago, though. Are there international partners that you're working with to really spread brand Trinidad and Tobago and to create opportunities for our artists? That's one. I know that was a mouthful. The second one, you spoke of an artist registry. Has there been given any thought to developing a pension plan for our artists? So many of our artists from times gone by end up in a difficult situation as they get older. Has there been any thought or any development of a pension plan for our artists? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, MP Manning. I would ask my manager of destination tourism to address the first one, which is the international partners and the opportunities from their tourism standpoint.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, PS, and thank you, Member, for the question. What we do at Tourism Trinidad as the agency of the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, we work with promoting on several spheres. Some of it would be on the first sphere in terms of identifying and participating in international and regional conferences and trade shows, where we have the platform to interact with the buyers and the demand side of the industry. And so in previous years, we would have collaborated with Tobago to attend a trade shows such as W2M. We have ITB coming up and such trade shows. On another there, we also work with some of the embassies providing support. So last Independence, we would have provided support, for example, for the Toronto Trinbago experience, where it was a multi-day exhibition. And through our team members being there physically, we would have had exposure to not just our musical elements of culture, but also exposing in both the diaspora and our visitors who visit us at those exhibitions to the cuisine elements. So having the sweets and treats in a parlor shop type of exhibition and having that rapport with those personnel. We also try to keep an open line of communication with entities that may have educational programs within them. So through our local universities here, understanding when their students go abroad, if they have studies, etc., being that conduit for just connecting and providing information via those platforms.
You. Maybe I can ask a more specific question. A little while ago, I'm not sure, maybe 2 years ago, there was a development with an international actor, Michael B. Jordan, and development of the Juve Spirits brand that I felt was a fantastic opportunity for Trinidad and Tobago to attach themselves to a person who has a global footprint. Was anything done to develop any relationship with these persons, or did anything happen or come from that?
Thank you, Member. In that particular instance, there would have been no follow-up traction. I know there was a lot of uproar from the national, with many sides stating that, as PS would have indicated, that we really should be the primary owners of all things that have those type of historical underpinnings. So in that particular instance, there was no follow-up from our team. However, I can cite our interaction with the world-renowned influencer, Mr. Mark Weens, where we would have brought him in 2022 to experience all things culinary, cuisine, and gastronomy in Trinidad and Tobago. And from that, that has really launched a campaign where both the international and regional spheres and even our diaspora have really increased their interest in finding out all things cuisine and culinary. And so the intent is that through our marketing department, we identify and partner with influencers and entities that have that level and reach, and we provide the facilitation to expose them to a multitude of experiences within culture. Most recently, I think we all may be aware, Tourism Trinidad would have partnered to facilitate and host Mrs. Felicia Rashad, a world-renowned American actress, a professor within Howard University, etc. And through our collaboration with our stakeholders within the cultural and tourism sphere, she was able to have immersive experiences at Phase 2 Pan Grove, interacting with our local musical icons, also getting the other side of culture, visiting historical areas such as Temple in the Sea. And that resounds well because that is PR that you can't put a price on it. And she has already spoken very highly of the types of experiences. So those are the types of interactions and collaborations that we're seeking to pursue.
Agreed, and I think you all did a wonderful job in showing, sorry? Oh, the pension question. Is it that you, the pension
Yeah,
question, do you
I
have
didn't
a
receive
follow-up?
a response.
Okay, could we have a response,
Yeah,
please?
sorry, I would respond on that one. So right now at the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, it's not something that we are actively looking at, but it's something that we could take under consideration, and we'll definitely have to discuss that with the Ministry of Finance.
I believe that Member Charles wants to jump in here on that score.
Thanks very much, Chair. Through you, and I see my colleague, Minister in the Ministry of Finance. It seems as if Carnival is heading in the direction of Japanese beads, and not Japanese, Chinese beads, and to the demise of industries like the seamstresses and the wire benders and whatnot. Is there any consideration being given to taxing the imports of these beads and whatnot in order to incentivize our local producers of these costumes, which could lead ultimately to an industry where we export costumes to Miami, etc. So it probably hasn't been done, but I'm asking if you could give some thought collaboratively, and I'm sure you'll get support from my colleague to incentivize local industries by a tax incentive, disincentive program.
So if I could respond, currently there are taxes paid on the importation of those items, right? Costumes, all those things, there are taxes paid, it's quite high from what I remember. Outside of that, there are certain incentives under the purview of the Ministry of Trade and Industry, for example, for manufacturing, custom duty allowances, exemptions that are afforded to manufacturers. Now, the issue really is the labor and getting the amount of labor required to produce the costumes. Because, as you know, I mean, maybe years ago, a couple of decades ago, there were a lot of persons, in a lot of seamstress and a lot of those type activities. But persons would have virtually moved away from it as opportunities were created in other areas of the economy. It's something we could look at, but to get the labor back there, because that is heavily labor intensive, it's going to have to be quite attractive in terms of payments for compensation then for persons. So it's something that we could look at in terms of how you move certain aspects of manufacturing back to the country for the costumes.
If I could just add, coming from the Ministry of Trade and Industry, if I wear another hat, there are one or two carnival mass bands that are in fact very labor intensive and are operational right through the year. I mean, I wouldn't call their name here because they'd have to pay me advertising fees. But, and they conduct their business, they in fact conduct their manufacturing activities. They have a substantive cadre of persons who work for them throughout the year, and they build costumes for other carnivals across the globe. And so they are manufacturers, and they do benefit from certain tax exemptions, so that there are inherent benefits. Yes, there are taxes applied for the beads and feathers that come in, but once those things are put together here and they're manufactured here, they can in fact apply to the Ministry of Trade and Industry as a manufacturer and have some of the customs duties in fact removed. But there's a process, and I think those discussions had been had before with the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, and I expect that that's something that we can continue to do to encourage further local manufacturing and exports of carnival costumes as well. But I want to join in on the conversation about Ms. Felicia Rashad, who enjoyed a lot of activity here in Trinidad and Tobago. And my question is, any other tourists coming to Trinidad and Tobago, or any local person wishing to enjoy all of those activities, do you make it very clear enough what Trinidad and Tobago has on offer to Trinidadians and Tobagonians, as well as to their tourists as well? Do you think it's packaged well enough, and that we are all aware of it?
So I would just say yes, but I'll give over to my colleague at the back to give all the explanation.
Thank you, PS, and thank you, Madam Chair. The area of promotion, we take it on a multitude of elements. As indicated, we have, of course, in this digital era, seeking to curate campaigns. So during the carnival season, we launched the No Place Like Home carnival campaign, pairing with the artist Mega Taja, to have that song that really hits home from an emotive standpoint. The intent is moving forward that in collaborating with our line ministry as well as Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, we'd want to discuss developing a more in-depth diaspora program where we identify from a source market standpoint who are the people wanting to come, what would they want to come for, understanding their travel patterns and behaviors, because we are strong believers that yes, the emotions can carry you that far, but we need the data behind understanding the intent of why people would want to come. And so it's from that program we're hoping to create and develop pointed packages that speak to persons' ability to spend, their disposable income, and understanding what they would like to develop. On the other side, from the developmental side, we've been working with our line ministry to work with communities to do community-based tourism enterprise workshops and training, letting persons on the ground within the local sphere understand the importance of digital marketing, understand the importance of product pricing and packaging, and so that they too can be conduits apart from our platforms and campaigns to also co-market not just themselves, but the destinations. But we do agree there's more work to be done in terms of highlighting the packages and ensuring that we really are filtering it to the right source markets and the personnel.
So I'm hearing yes, and I'm hearing no, I'm hearing developmental, and so on. If I ask you another question then, is there a clear calendar of festivals for Trinidad and Tobago, carnival apart? Are some of these festivals dying? Do you have a list of festivals that anybody in the world could go on to come to Trinidad and Tobago for in June or September? Well, I mean, there's Tobago Carnival now, but you tell me a calendar of festivals. And we have a lot more to offer apart from Carnival.
Yes, very accurate. Thank you for that question, Madam Chair. We have currently recently developed a strategic plan for our agency in collaboration with our line ministry. And in that, we've identified a festival development strategy, segmenting the year into quarters. So of course, as we know, that first quarter, it's all things carnival and the festivities that come with it. But there's a natural development of music / jazz and festivals that follow right after. So we're currently in the process of curating and pulling together with our stakeholders music-related activities and events, which we'll be filtering again through our marketing conduits and channels to filter outward to let people know that these are the activities happening. We've also identified fashion as a somewhat small niche, but given our natural creativity in that realm, not just with the creation of masks, but there have been, in previous years, we used to have a Trinidad and Tobago Fashion Festival. And so we're working with the stakeholders within that niche also to develop that. And we know that that last quarter of our year really is rich with a lot of religious observances and cultural days and events. And so we've coined that the festive season here in Trinidad and Tobago, where we will be identifying not just the religious, but also that Christmas season that really comes with a multitude of elements. So we would have commenced developing monthly calendar of events that are shared through our digital platforms and outward with our stakeholders. And we're currently actively working on developing that year-round type of event scope that is broken into these thematic quarterly calendar of events.
Yeah, because monthly doesn't really allow you to plan. So could you give us an indication of when you're going to be in a position? And I understand that you have merged two ministries. So I know you're looking at a cultural policy and a tourism policy that came from two different ministries, and you're merging and so on, and that you probably have identifying one way forward, etc. So I understand that a lot of your work is developmental, but at the same time, it's very important to our diversification agenda. When can Trinidad and Tobago and the rest of the world see a festivals calendar for Trinidad and Tobago?
Thank you. What I want to say, Madam Chairperson, right, is that currently at the Ministry of Tourism, one of the main projects we are working on is the development of an app for Trinidad and Tobago, which would have all the details, because you talked about packaging information for tourists and persons wanting to visit Trinidad. So the app is pilot right now, right? It's available on iOS. We're still working it through, right? But there are several areas that it identifies. There's an entire festival calendar. I'll just have it up on my phone here, so I'll just give you a calendar of events. There are tours where you will get access to different tour operators, facilitators. There's sites and attractions. There's culinary, which would be food, which will tell you everything food related in the restaurants near you, things like that. Festivals, shopping, where to stay, getting around, meeting facilities. Of course, there's several guides and maps and whatnot and stuff like that. So it's an entire rollout that we're looking to put in the hands of tourists then and make it easily accessible. So we're improving our website, but we're also in the process of developing an app and rebuilding the app, because there was one that existed prior to my arrival at the ministry, but a lot of content, a lot of information, a lot of graphics, as you know, we need to change, and the app needs to evolve then, more or less.
Chair, can I just, before you just
Absolutely.
squeeze in?
Absolutely.
Would that include Tobago, the Tobago tourism product?
Right, so
As you're,
right, the reason I said visit Trinidad is because Trinidad Tourism is the one working on the app right now, but yes, it should incorporate both islands because it's one country.
Okay, because we are talking, you saying all these things about the festival and your calendar of events, I think that should fit in nicely with the getting to Tobago and
Right.
Trinidad.
Yeah.
Trinidad, for the most part, is not a problem, but getting to Tobago is a significant problem, and lots of people will tell you that. They tell you having festivals in Tobago, and the people coming in, they tell you, listen, I could go to other Caribbean countries far easier than I can come to Tobago. So therefore, as you put in your calendar of events, just ensure that the other part of it in terms of the transport to Trinidad and Tobago, particularly Tobago, is a part of that in terms of the planning. So that when the festivals, when the ministries in the foreign countries, when they are advertised, then they know how, the people know how to get here. Just an addition.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Thank you. I'll now go to another member. You ready? Okay. I know that my other members will take the floor shortly, but let me go back to cultural agreements. I understand that the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs would have a number of cultural agreements signed with perhaps a slew of countries, maybe 20 or so odd countries. Can you tell me, are we activating those? Have we been using those? Have we been refreshing them? Do you see us signing any further agreements with other countries?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Some of them are definitely active and have produced some obvious returns. One of them is the Mahatma Gandhi Institute That's one example. In terms of anything in the pipeline or that may be next, we are negotiating at the moment with South Africa and Spain. Excuse me. No, just two at the moment that are in the pipeline.
How far are they in the pipeline?
There's a draft agreement at the moment between Trinidad and Tobago and South Africa. There's a draft being considered. Similarly, with Spain, there's a memorandum of understanding. In terms of time frame for conclusion, I couldn't say because it depends on the language, agreement on the language in the text. Right now, with regard to South Africa, we are waiting some feedback from them, as well as from Spain. So the ball at this time is in the other party's court until they return with either different language or acceptance of what's proposed. Thank you, Madam Chair.
May I? Would you say then that you have made considerable use of these existing cultural agreements that you have with several countries?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would say that some of them we have to revisit because I'm not certain of how active the elements of them are at this time. Some of them definitely they are, but as you mentioned, there are a number of them. So it would be for us to go over them, and that would have to be in concert with the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, because we would assist in getting us into the agreement or the memorandum of understanding, and some of the implementation, of course, would be with our partner ministry. Thank you.
By example, Trinidad and Tobago has an excellent diplomatic relations with China, and this is this is also commercially as well. I recall a China Shanghai International Arts Festival and Arts Fair that in your submissions you made reference to this particular fair. Did Trinidad and Tobago participate, and did you get support from your partner ministries also? What was the success of our participation in that particular fair?
Madam Chair, if I may, because Ministry of Tourism actually sent 2 officers to that fair, so I could ask my cultural officer, Tree, to just provide an update on the benefits that would have accrued from our participation.
Greetings. Thank you, PS. Thank you, Chair. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts collaborated with the hosts of the China Performing Arts Festival to send 2 officers across there. So it was an example of how cultural exchanges normally work. The receiving country assisted in terms of paying for the accommodation, etc. of our officers there. And our officers attended 2 events that were taking place almost at the same time. One was a workshop, and the other one was the Performing Arts Fair. And what they have come back to Trinidad and Tobago recommending, now this happened in November, October to November, October 12th to November 1st last year was the duration of the exercise. And what they've come back to Trinidad and Tobago recommending based on their experiences is that we continue to participate in the International Management Capability of Enterprises seminar. So there was a seminar on managing an international seminar on managing enterprises, etc. They've also recommended that we participate in the annual Shanghai Performing Arts Fair. This fair is part performing arts showcase and part business showcase, where what they do is they invite producers, impresarios, etc., from all over the world to come into the fair to see what is on offer, to see if they want to book or hire anybody that they see. They even invite venues to display at the fair, so you could see if you might want to tour or take your production to this venue. So it's about the cultural side of it, and it's also about the business side of it as well. They've also recommended that we join there's a network of Silk Road Arts Festivals that China has launched, which helps to connect festivals around the world and connect them to China. So they've recommended that we join that network of festivals and see how we could basically make ourselves known through that network, use that network to advertise ourselves and seek new customers, new audiences from around the world. So those were the major findings and recommendations from the officers who went to China last year. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I think Member Charles wants to weigh in here.
Thank you. Thank you. Defining culture in its broader context as a way of life and whatnot. There are developments globally. I know in Australia, they're limiting foreign students, for example, because for what immigration, a lot of them stay on. They say a lot of their students come from India, from China, and Nepal. So they're limiting. Canada is instituting limitations on students, foreign students and whatnot. So the question is, in linking with other countries and developing MOUs and whatnot, do we have a global scan to see what opportunities exist? I knew years ago we had in our medical school a lot of students from one of the Southern African states, a number of students. I knew years ago we had Nigerian students in a school, a drilling school in St. Madeleine. So is there that scan taking place to seek opportunities for students, international students, or other visitors to Trinidad and Tobago to enhance our revenue situation?
Thank you, Member. Madam Chair. There isn't that kind of focus on drawing people to Trinidad and Tobago for education purposes in the way I think you mean. Through relationship, I know that there have been occasions when trainees, call them that, have come from other countries, but those would have been in specific spheres. One of them is energy. Okay, but we have not been doing that kind of scan to bring students to Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So perhaps in terms of developing links with Guyana, it is possible, and I think there's something taking place where Guyanese students have access to our petroleum education program. So just in general, I know it does not fit neatly into what we consider cultural tourism, but in terms of our diversification trust, I'm suggesting that we widen the net to look at those sorts of things and give consideration perhaps to the possibilities therein. And another question linked to it, the question of co-destinations, because tourists will come to Trinidad to experience A, but perhaps go to Tobago for B, and go to St. Lucia for their French influence and foodstuffs and whatnot. So I'm asking a question that is directly from the book, if with your permission. And the question is, describe cultural diplomacy strategies employed by other islands, jurisdictions, which can be considered for possible inclusion in Trinidad and Tobago. And this is the context of linking with other countries.
Thank you, Madam Chair. That's a very good question. When I look at other Caribbean countries and how they use cultural diplomacy, I think we can certainly learn from, I don't want to use, I'll use the word robust approach that Jamaica has, for example, in how they promote their cultural elements and aspects and features. I think we can learn from the aggressiveness of the marketing strategy that is used. I don't think necessarily that Trinidad and Tobago is that aggressive in how we market ourselves and who we are and what we have to offer. So I think more in attitude than in particular things that they may have done, but the result is that you see and hear from them more. And I think we can perhaps learn from that. Thank you, Madam Chair.
No. Oh, well, my Barbadian ancestry, they do, I think, an excellent job in terms of various festivals. We have cultural and religious festivals. They have rum festivals in which they use to promote Barbados's rum as the best in the Caribbean, and they have sporting activities and whatnot. So I agree with you that perhaps there's need for a little oomph, in our thrust to tell the world what Trinidad and Tobago has. I think we are a great nation, but we're not as aggressive as the Jamaicans in promoting what they have, and I think they have less than us.
I don't think I'd want to comment on that, but thank you, Member Charles, and I move to Member Dylan Remy.
Thank you, Chair. I think that we have been spoiled over the years as Trinbagonians because we have been blessed and we've had lots of, let's say the oil and gas sector has buoyed us up so much that we have not really looked at the other aspects of what we have as a nation. And now we are looking into that and we see that we have so much to offer. And as you say, it's now putting that into some kind of structure and framework. And I think we do have a wonderful opportunity I think we are the probably more, I think you could agree with me, Chair, that we are probably the most creative nation in the world. Would you agree with me?
In more ways than one.
Madam Chair, through you, per square mile and per capita,
Per
yes.
square mile and per capita, yes. Now, it's for us to see how we can build on it and really help us, this beautiful place that we have called home. Welcome home. Okay, now in the Ministry of Tourism, in your submission, you talked about a technical forum on culture and the arts that had not yet been established. And apparently this technical forum was supposed to include lots of ministries and just tell us where that is.
Thank you. So that would have come out of the culture policy back in 2020. And with the merger of the two ministries, it basically didn't get off the ground because we didn't get as much traction as we had intended with getting something like that going. It doesn't mean that we didn't pursue the aspects that we were looking at. It just means that the strategy was revised because there were certain ministries that were supposed to be part of it that were no longer there.
Okay.
So what we had to do, we had to go back and revisit it and just make sure that we achieve what we intended to achieve.
And is that a part of your, because you talked about in the submission too, you talked about the policy that you are working with now, that I think you said the policy period that you are working with ends in 2025?
Correct.
And that you I think this year is supposed to be starting to review. Could you just tell us where that is too?
Right. So the 2020 policy that was approved, right, would have ended in 2025. We are currently undertaking a comprehensive review of all the strategies that were to be implemented to see where it is at, what was not implemented, what we needed further assistance with. So it's something that we are rolling out this fiscal. It's research that has been undertaken this fiscal.
Thank you. Member Manning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm seeking some clarification on the sport tourism sub-policy. Where are we in terms of implementation of that sub-policy? Also, a breakdown of the thematic areas and related strategic actions. Also, what support would be required from the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs in the implementation of this important policy?
So the sports sub-policy, as my director culture was just reminding me, was not finalized. It's something it's an ongoing discussion that we've been having with the Ministry of Sports and Community Development to advance it. In the absence of the policy, however, the ministry has been undertaking certain initiatives to advance sports tourism, particularly the Caribbean Premier League, the hosting of certain international events. There's a close collaboration with the Ministry of Sports and advancing the Tourism Trust of Trinidad and Tobago.
What about the second part, with the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs? How can they assist in implementation, well, of the proposed policy, because you haven't finalized the policy?
Right, so definitely it would have to involve three ministries, which would be the Ministry of Sports, the Ministry of Tourism, and the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. Principally because through the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, we will reach out to the overseas market, as well as promoting certain events that will be taking place in Trinidad. For example, if we were to have certain cricket matches, it would have to be promoted regionally so that we could get tourists coming in for the matches as well, not just for local sales.
I just have one additional question. I'm wondering if there's been any thought given to having a health tourism policy. And let me describe exactly what that means. In terms of health tourism, I don't mean persons coming to Trinidad and Tobago to access our health system. It's already burdened and challenged as it is. There have been other parts of the world where you have, much like the Hyatt hotel model, where you have maybe a Johns Hopkins or some sort of other private health institution, and they would attract patients from other parts of the world. And of course, we have several advantages as opposed to our CARICOM neighbors, our geographic location, outside of the hurricane belt. Tobago is a wonderful place to situate such a facility. Has there been any thought given to a health tourism policy for Trinidad and Tobago? Also keeping in mind of the competitive advantage that we actually produce medical students here in Trinidad and Tobago, unlike many of our Caribbean neighbors. Thanks.
Right. So what I can say with respect to health tourism, it's not something that we've actively looked at or pursued, but it's something that we can take under consideration. I know the benefits that you are highlighting, and I just want to say that what we would have experienced, and part of our visitor experience in terms of surveying persons, tourists visiting Trinidad and Tobago, we take note that a lot of persons come here really for leisure type activities. They visit Tobago, they go to the Paramin Lookout, Maracas Beach. These are the type of things. People come for relaxation in Trinidad and Tobago. So it is definitely something we could take into consideration. Definitely.
Thank you. Member Charles.
Thank you. As a follow-up to my colleague, Mr. Manning, in terms of sports tourism, what has happened to the yachting industry that that years ago used to bring in a lot of tourists or visitors because of the fact that we had a safe harbor, we are out of the hurricane belt. And to me, I get the sense, without information, that it is somewhat in decline. And a second question is the question of the National Aquatic, or the center, the complex that was built with the intent of bringing in sports tourists. And I think there were some initiatives with Canadians who had come here to train and whatnot. How is it, from your vantage point, how is that developing?
I know, member, that question really belongs in another place because yachting really falls under the Ministry of Trade and Industry. I'd like to keep my hat on for today, but I know that tourism has a role. Perhaps I could just say that there was some difficulty in the post-COVID environment. As you know, our borders had been closed, and there's been a lot of activity aimed at reviving the industry. Much compensation had been done for many of the craftsmen and other businesses involved in the yachting industry, so that there were a number of grants which have been given out by government to several of them. I know that we now have a bit of a resurgence, and the numbers are growing. And so I can tell you for close of 2023, we should have reached somewhere around 800 yachts coming from zero. But there's so much more that we can do, simply because we have very skilled craftsmen here in Trinidad and Tobago. I know that there's soon to be implemented a yachting apprenticeship program to ensure that we are developing continually craftsmen for the industry. There's continual advertising, which we do in conjunction with the Ministry of Tourism and Culture and the Arts as well, in terms of advising Trinidad and Tobago as a destination. Come and stay here, have your crafts repaired, etc., your marine craft repaired, etc., etc. But I say my part, and I allow the minister, the PS in tourism to say his part. Yes.
Well, thank you, Madam Chairperson. I think you would have covered the yachting question in detail, so there isn't anything much that I could add to that. Just to say that the industry was hit pretty hard with respect to COVID in terms of the manufacturers, and the government did offer tremendous support through the Ministry of Trade and Industry. I was there at the time, so I know of the support that they were doing at the time. With respect to the Aquatic Center, it's a discussion we would have to have with the Ministry of Sports, because, as you know, that's under the remit of the Ministry of Sports. I take your point that it's a tremendous opportunity, and it's something that we will discuss with them.
Chair?
Thank you, member. Dylan Remy, please.
Okay, so we have the ICC T20 World Cup coming up, just a couple months away. How are all these things that we are talking about, foreign and CARICOM affairs, tourism, sports, bringing visitors to our island, and also, I mean, loads of them, I would hope, and also marketing our Trinidad and Tobago product? How is that? How are they planning for that coming on from your ministries?
Okay, so I could say that Trinidad Tourism is taking the lead with respect to this, along with the Ministry of Sports and Community Development. They have a planning committee that is made up of various representatives, including the ICC, and they meet regularly to plan the event. Now, in terms of the marketing aspect, Trinidad Tourism is promoting from a holistic tourism standpoint in terms of getting visitors here. The collaboration with the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, because you have so many persons, and it's not just Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, sorry, the Ministry of Works and Transport, Airport Authority is under them as well. You're going to have a lot of persons coming in. We need to look at the airport, and in terms of easing persons to get them through the airport as quickly as possible, without, inconveniencing persons then, right? So it's a holistic approach. The Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs has been assisting through the overseas mission in terms of promoting the information in terms of what we have coming up on the calendar of events. So I could say that is happening through the missions. As I said, Tourism Trinidad is actively promoting, and the Ministry of Sports and Community Development, they are the main person liaising with the entity, that's the ICC, on this matter.
Thank you. Any more questions? No? I just want to ask one thing. Are you reviewing at all the incentives and funding mechanisms that are available to our creatives and our cultural artists at all? As far as I understand, the government has a slew of incentives across the board. I don't know where we are to encourage the creatives and the artists and so on.
Thank you for that question. So in this fiscal, in terms of the work program that we have outlined, we do not have it on our agenda, but there's a definite need for it, I would say, because the tourism aspect, under the Ministry of Tourism, the main incentives we offer are through the Tourism Development Act, which only focus on hotel development. Outside of that, you have certain grants that are offered through the Culture Division of the Ministry. And as you had said at the start, the Culture Division was recently merged with Tourism, so they kind of kept separate accounts and whatnot and stuff like that. There's a need to refocus and ensure that everything is in alignment, so that you are promoting effectively Trinidad and Tobago, not just cultural products, but cultural products that will generate tourist activity, that would feed back into trade, investment, exports, all of these things. I've had initial conversations with Exim Bank, and we are doing some work, but I don't think right now that we will be able to produce something before the end of this fiscal, but definitely next fiscal is one of the top priorities that I would have on the agenda for the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, to review the existing incentives to see where we are at and to propose new incentives that we could hit a more targeted approach.
Thank you, Madam Chair. From the standpoint of the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, no, Madam Chair, we do not at this time, but it may yet be a proposal that comes from, I imagine, any quarter in government or outside of government. Thank you.
But at the Ministry of Tourism,
No, so we haven't identified any cultural ambassadors at the Ministry of Tourism. What we focused on was really getting persons into the overseas market through the funding mechanisms and helping them to promote themselves out there.
thank you. Follow-up from member.
I'm looking at the question of the diaspora. And a lot of the tourists that come for Carnival are homesick Trinidadians abroad. But given my anecdotal experience, the first generation come back. Second generation, they think about coming back. And the third generation are lost. I'm just wondering about the long-term, the longevity of our product if we do not tap into the third and fourth generation of the original migrants from Trinidad. And the question is, are there, and in the cultural ambassador, not cultural ambassador, attaches, is there any concern in terms of reinforcing their Trinidadian identity abroad, and that we do not lose them in time, in time?
Member, Madam Chair, that is very thought-provoking question. While the activities of the attaches have been generally not focused on that third generation to which you're referring. In Washington, Washington, D.C., there is a lot of activity that is focused on the youth. While it's not necessarily all the diaspora to which you're referring, but there is that focus. But I understand your point that after the first generation, who will come back home, and the second, the third may have very little understanding or experience of Trinidad and Tobago, except what maybe a grandparent might have told them in reminiscing about home. So I think that is perhaps a good point that we can take away from this exchange in focusing on those persons who are part of the Trinidad and Tobago diaspora. Know little about it, but are definitely people we want to attract, not just to come home for Carnival or for a festival, but to have a serious investment approach to the country, to see what they can offer the country and what maybe the country can offer them as well. Thank you.
Jamaica seems to be doing, when we talk about what we could learn from, Jamaica seems to be doing an excellent job of maintaining and expanding the links cross generations. And one of the concerns I have when I talk to my friends who have from Trinidad, who have grandchildren, they speak Jamaican, they have the Rastafari talk and whatnot. And maybe there is something that we could learn. Maybe it has to do with the assertiveness of ourselves and our culture, who we are. Because for example, that we have the East Indian diaspora, East Indian in Trinidad, and the elements of the Diwali, and we see it as a festival. But looked at from a different perspective, it could be an outreach to those abroad, including Caucasians who want to identify with that branch of yoga and whatnot. And I think perhaps there are opportunities in Trinidad for us to engage. And bearing in mind our Barbadian friends, they encourage a sense of patriotism in the education system. So you are Bajan, you speak Barbadian, you're proud of your Bajan. I do not think in our education system, given that we have nurses leaving, we have young professionals leaving and whatnot, we have to reinforce that brand in a way that is in your face, and we do it with pride and dignity, so that, these are just some thoughts for consideration, not for response necessarily.
It's fair to say that we are all ambassadors of Trinidad and Tobago, and I think that we've left our mark to the rest of the world, and that our students are doing that for us. Our diaspora continues to do that for us as well, but I would agree that there's much more work to be done. I want to bring this afternoon's session to a close, and in thanking both ministries that are before us, I want to see that there appears to be a very synergistic relationship between the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts and the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs. What I think is needed, and I'm speaking on behalf of my colleagues, is that there's a review of the existing mechanisms that you have in place, and whether or not these can be put to work. In terms of all of the cultural agreements which we have, I'm not satisfied that there's clear direction as to where we're taking these, how we can use them. I don't know if in 2024 we will have an understanding of exactly what's taking place in 2025 in terms of those cultural agreements which we have. I'm not so sure that there are plans that have already put in place for that kind of cultural diplomacy agenda with regard to the agreements which are already in place. And I think that I can offer some suggestions that we look very clearly at those, and at the same time to Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, that we also look very clearly at having a series of events made known to the rest of the world and even to Trinidad and Tobago, so that year round, all around, I mean, from January to December, we are on show to the rest of the world. And that Carnival only takes us 2 months. And you have people coming into Carnival twice and coming in for the earlier fetes and leaving and coming back in and so on. We want people coming into this country right throughout the year, and therefore I think there must be a little bit. I think what is required is some specificity, if I can say, clarity on our calendar of activities and events and sites, et cetera, et cetera. I know a lot of work is going on, and I congratulate the Ministry of Tourism and Culture and the Arts for their Paramin Lookout, for instance, which is world-class. And of course, you did a great job in terms of Carnival this year. Never without its hiccups, but by and large, we really showcased Trinidad and Tobago's talent, and our panorama was world class, and even the day's events, I think, pretty good as well. I think you have to think about the public as well. The rest of Trinidad and Tobago, you want them well vested into Carnival as well. You want them to be able to see something on the day as well. So think about the gaps that there are and how we can use those gaps really to ensure that all that we do is considered world-class, and Trinidad and Tobago remains outstanding as a global country that has a lot to offer the rest of the world, particularly when it comes to our culture, our heritage, our tourism product. But of course, much credit to you all, but still some work to be done. And as we close, let me also tell you that we feel that the members have decided that we shouldn't only speak with the ministries, but we should also invite some of the other stakeholders to speak with us, so that on the next occasion we would invite the Art Society of Trinidad and Tobago, the Tobago Tourism Agency and the sister counterpart as well, Tourism Trinidad, also Pan Trinbago, and of course we would look at having someone from the chutney environment as well, and someone from one of the SOCA organizations as well. And we would want to ensure that at least the permanent secretaries are here on the next occasion, which is the third Wednesday in March, to further this discussion on Trinidad and Tobago's cultural diplomacy and opportunities for strengthening our cultural and tourism products. So I want to thank you, but I want to ask you to give some closing comments to both PSs. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you for the exchange that we've had this afternoon. We, from the Ministry of Foreign and CARICOM Affairs, have some takeaways. Even in some of the things that you have not said, there are areas where we still have some fine-tuning to do, and maybe some groundwork as well. But we certainly appreciate the feedback that we've received this afternoon, and being here with our colleagues from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, it has been useful. And I am sure there will be some immediate action on our part. Even from this afternoon, a meeting has already been scheduled with someone from a mission to take forward some of the ideas from this meeting and some that we would not have had an opportunity to discuss today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, PS2, sir. Yes, Murad.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to members of the committee for all the guidance provided at today's session. The Ministry of Tourism, Culture and the Arts will definitely be knocking on some doors afterwards, particularly the Ministry of Finance with respect to the pension plan and a couple other initiatives. But this session was very insightful for us. It helped us to look at it from a different perspective in terms of the way we do things and the reason that we're doing things. We are here to serve the interests of Trinidad and Tobago and the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So we will be putting our best foot forward, and we will continue to do good work, and obviously with the recommendations of the committee and the guidance of the committee, we will implement the recommendations. So thank you once again.
Thank you very much, and the meeting now comes